Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you back, or for the first time, to We'll Bring the Popcorn, your favorite film and TV podcast.
On today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the new film Nobody 2 and the new Marvel animated series Eyes of Wakanda.
We haven't seen a new film in the series since 2017, but we do have the new Pirates of the Caribbean film is in the works. It's going to be a reboot, but it was pretty interesting that Jerry Bruckheimer came out and said that there is a part written for Jack Sparrow in this, and he's talked to Johnny Depp about it. So there's potential that he's going to come back, but it is a reboot. So that would mean he's either some sort of glorified cameo in it to pass the torch to someone else. Like maybe he's going to be much older, like he is in real life, and they're just going to pass the torch to someone else. But that's kind of interesting that they haven't really talked about anybody else but Johnny Depp, like have him come back. But that is pretty much one of the more modern classic characters that we've had. Like I can't think outside of Jack Sparrow what type of like big character like that we've had in a film that people want to see more of. Like it's one of those where he disappeared into the role and like that's Jack Sparrow. That's no longer Johnny Depp, and we haven't really had that many of those characters in the last 10, 15 years.
It's kind of few and far between because, we haven't visited the Pirates franchise in over 8 years now. It's been 8 years since, Dead Men Tell No Tales was released. And, everybody's been clamoring for Johnny Depp to kind of make an appearance if they do another one of these. And I'm glad that they kept it to a caveat of, like, he'll only be back if it's something he's satisfied with for his character. So be protective of your character. I'm all for that. I kind of wonder if it's going to be like hey, we've got a new group of pirates and they got to hunt down Jack Sparrow for advice or maybe help with something. And that's kind of how he's, involved but not involved with it kind of thing, just to kind of move it forward. But it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with because, like you said, Jack Sparrow is a beloved character that, people just clamor to see him in. Like if you want a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, Jack Sparrow's the character you want. Like he's synonymous with the franchise. It's like you said, there's very few of those types of characters anymore that are around outside of like a comic book character or just like one particular character associated with a franchise. Like you have maybe John Wick or maybe a couple of these others that are still popular, but not on that level. The Pirates franchise is $1 billion franchise. So it's going to be interesting to see if he gets involved into what capacity, but I'm definitely willing to give this a shot. I know Dead Men Tell No Tales was kind of an okay movie. Just like I'm of the belief that I feel like they've beaten it into the ground a little bit here in a reboot. Is it necessary? We'll see if there's still a market for it. But the Pirates franchise is still extremely popular, so we'll see what comes out of it.
Yeah, and I gotta say, The Curse of the Black Pearl was pretty much an instant classic when it came out. I don't think anybody expected, all right, Jerry Bruckheimer's going to do a film about a Disney ride that's a slow-moving boat ride from, okay, that might be okay. It's pirates. You can do some of it. It's an incredible film. Like, it's one of my favorites. I absolutely love going back and watching Curse of the Black Pearl because it's got that sense of adventure and whimsy and just it did so many things right. And that the sequels, it kind of like it's one where the first one to me is still the best, and
sure.
The others like the second and third are good, but it just starts slowly going downhill a little bit with it. It just didn't have that magic that they captured with that first one. So yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with Captain Jack Sparrow and if there's something that they can do fun other than it being like maybe a 30-second or a minute-long cameo or something like that it fits right in this. As you said, maybe they could be tracking there's only one man who can help us. Okay, it's Captain Jack. And
of course,
as you had, Keira Knightley was 17 or so when she did the first one as well, and Orlando Bloom was I think he was in his 20s. Like they were all young when that started, and yeah, you're looking at 2026 or 7 before this film potentially could be out, because we haven't heard anything about filming starting on it, because we've heard about this reboot, and we've also heard about an all-female with Margot Robbie, which I think that's kind of dead in the water right now, but they're still trying to do something with it. But yeah, we'll see if Johnny thinks this is a good thing for him to come back to. He's got full say if he returns, and they'll just basically write Jack Sparrow out if he decides he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's a smart way to move forward with it. I'm in the same boat you are. That first film is absolutely incredible. and doing the guy thing, have a nickname for my car, and my car is the Black Pearl, is what I call it. Just for the love of the film. So, a lot of love for that film in my heart as well. But we'll see where the future of the franchise goes, whether they can get Johnny Depp back in the fold or not. But I want to turn us to another story here, and coming off the success of Weapons being the huge hit that it's become so far, like I think this weekend, even box office wise, it's still going to hold number one over the weekend, which is huge for kind of this original horror story. Like,
and it crossed 100 million.
I love it. I love to see that, and you can go back into our last episode to see what we think about the film itself. But Zach Cregger now is talking about taking over the Resident Evil franchise and doing his next film with it. And he's kind of given a little bit of insight into what he's got planned for it. He's not going the direction of telling the story of Leon necessarily, because he feels like it's been beaten to death a little bit in the video games, and he's kind of wanting to do his own thing with it, which I'm ecstatic for.
Yeah, because you had the Mila Jovovich ones where it blended some of those characters from the games and a little bit of the story, but it didn't, it started off with the mansion and the woods and everything, and you had it go on kind of its own trajectory after that. And those are very hit or miss because they went more high action than horror with them. But it'll be interesting to have someone who does horror like he does. I mean, Weapons and Barbarian are both very quirky, over the top, crazy at times, but that can work for Resident Evil. And I see some people online being a little upset that they're not doing Leon or doing the characters in the game, but you have the game series, you have a little bit of it in the Mila Jovovich stuff, but let him set something original within this world and see what happens with it. It could be fun, because we saw with like Resident Evil 7, which had nobody really. I mean, it was set in its own new setting with new characters and everything else, and it is one of the best that's come out lately. Like, they really did something new and fresh and interesting. He could do something very much like 7 and be very successful with it. I think he mentioned that we'll see like the Umbrella Corp and everything in there, and we'll see nods to Raccoon City, and we'll have nods to everybody, but it's not based around those core characters, and I'm not upset with that. I think with his creativity and the way he tells stories, he could turn something pretty unique and original. I mean, you could even take something like with Resident Evil 4 that went to this village and creepiness, even though it did have, Leon in it and stuff, that you could transform that into something. Sure. And you remove one character, but you could still tell the same story. So it's going to be really interesting to see what parts of the Resident Evil universe he borrows from to make his original.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him get his hands on. Like you said, he's got the credentials now with 2 popular horror films underneath his belt, and he's taking on a big IP like Resident Evil that, it's when you deal with IPs like that, obviously there's going to be very strong fan bases associated with it that are going to have a ton of opinions. A lot of them are going to be negative if it's not the exact thing that they want to see from it, but it's hard to make those hardcore fan bases happy. So he does have a little bit of his work cut out for him, but I'm excited to see what he takes and does with it. Like you said, there's been some games where they've spun off from the Leon or Claire stories and have really told some really fun and interesting, things. Does he bring up a Lady the Lady D stories or whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
and that'll break the internet. That'll break the internet because people are wild about her in kind of the wrong way. They're
of course, but does he go in a direction like that? Does he make it kind of a set type period piece, or does he make it more futuristic? Because Resident Evil has kind of gone both directions with it, at least even in the games. Like, there's been throwbacks, there's been kind of a futuristic stuff. The movies very much went into kind of this futuristic type setting also as well. So there's a ton of different influences to pull from, but we'll see what direction he decides to go with it. He's got some capital built up with me that he could take this risk, and I'm willing to check it out and see what he does with it for sure.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing. We seem like we're maybe finally going to have some tension and horror in a Resident Evil film, because I mean, you've had the animated films as well that had a little bit of it, but we really haven't in live action gotten horror with Resident Evil. I mean, there was some deaths and scenes that are interesting in the Mila Jovovich series, but it wasn't horror at all in there. So he can do horror, he can do intensity and everything like that, and keeping you at your seat. So it's going to be fun. Since we're still talking about him, I did want to touch on that. he's apparently in talks to do a Weapons prequel about Aunt Gladys as well. And I'm not sure if Weapons was one that I thought was going to become a franchise that have multiple films. So I don't know how I feel about potentially going back and showing stuff on Aunt Gladys. Like, there could be interesting because there's a lot of mystery that was left with that. But do you really need, just because Weapons, a unique original horror film, does well, do we have to instantly look to try to crank out 467 more of them?
Well, I mean, that's what we do nowadays, right? That's you take something that's successful and you branch off of it and try to, milk every last penny out of you can for it. That's kind of the business that, most of Hollywood is in right now. So I get it. There's some intrigue around the character and her origins and where she comes from and why she's a thing. But I thought it would be cool if they kind of left it as a standalone story, but we'll see if that movie winds up being made. But that's a character I'm kind of on the fence, and if I care enough to go back and delve into the backstory of, but I could be in the minority there. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, if it's done well, we're all for it, but it's just do we have to go immediately? I mean, it's still in theaters. Like, we just reviewed it, and we're already talking about sequels or prequels and spinoffs and everything else. I mean, but at the same time, Zach said he has some ideas and stories for like sequels and prequels for it too, so he's kind of leading the charge on that as well. So if the original creative behind it thinks that he's got stories to tell, then I'm okay with it more than like the studio just saying like, hey, you made $100 million, let's do 17 more.
Right. Which, hopefully he stands his ground, and if he's not creatively behind it, that, he doesn't associate with it at that point. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I want to take us over to Stranger Things, because I know we both are really anticipating this final season. But ahead of it, we got word the Duffer brothers have kind of ended their deal with Netflix in a way. They still got a lot in the pipeline with Netflix. Of course, you got the final season of Stranger Things. You have the animated spinoff they're going to do, the animated prequel. There's also talks of another like sequel or spinoff coming from Stranger Things as well. And then they have 2 more original shows they're doing on Netflix. But yeah, they're moving over to Paramount, mainly because Paramount said they could do feature films. So they're going to do the streaming TV shows. They're going to do some feature films. But it was kind of interesting that Cindy Holland, who was at Netflix at the time and greenlit Stranger Things to become a series there, is the one who's handling streaming over at Paramount as well. So they're kind of going back to someone that they started their journey with as well. But it's kind of interesting because we've seen this happen a couple times now. Just don't know if this means that it's going to be good for them or if they just kind of fade away and we don't really see much after Stranger Things from them.
We'll see. This is kind of a weird deal because it's like, have you fulfilled all of your obligations on your contract with Netflix at this point? Because it sounds like they're double dipping a little bit. Like, it's, all right, we've still got all this stuff. Is this stuff already shot? Do we know what's going on with it? Like, how attached to it are they going to be on top of what they're doing for literally a competitor to the company that they've been working with? Like, it's a very interesting story to pay attention to because, like you said, they have these projects that are supposedly in the works. Are those dead now because they're leaving? Like, what is the nature of the agreement? Like, is it one of those like, hey, we'll fulfill these obligations and then we start working at Paramount? Like, is this like,
I would assume that's
is this like something that's going to kick in like 4 years or 3 years once they get some of this other stuff? And how does that affect the quality of the stuff that they do while they're on their way out the door? Because sometimes, if you're looking towards your next paycheck, you could start phoning it in a little bit theoretically. Like, I don't know. I hope that's not the case. I hope you would have enough pride in your work that you can, still give us quality content before you move on to your new deal. But this one is a very interesting story that it's kind of a rare thing. It's not the only time we've seen this, but like, it's super rare when you've got somebody already signing a new deal with a competitor while also finishing your obligations to this. Like, it's usually like, okay, we have to get all of this done, then our contract's done, then we can start working on something else. Like, it's very interesting to see how it all plays out for sure.
Yeah, and to have it announced before we even get the first, because Stranger Things Season 5 is being split into 3 parts. We don't even have the first part yet, and they're already announcing all this. It can be on people's minds who go into the industry stuff a little bit more and be on media and everyone else's mind of how it is, because this goes back to the Game of Thrones situation because, of course, the last season of Game of Thrones back in 2019 was met with a lot of reservation. Not a lot of people enjoyed that final season, including the actors and a lot of other people. But you had the two showrunners behind that, Benoff and Weiss, who announced that they were leaving HBO to go not only do a Star Wars trilogy of films, but also do stuff for Netflix. And since that ended in 2019, they've produced one thing, really. And that was Three Body Problem, which I still haven't had a chance to check out on Netflix. But in 6 years, they've really produced one thing after that deal was done. And a lot of it, I think, had to do with the backlash of that final season. So my mind instantly went, well, hopefully Stranger Things 5 ends on a good note and they can go into these new projects with people still being excited about it, because that last season of Game of Thrones really hurt those two guys of being able to do anything. Their Star Wars trilogy was canned. They have nothing to do with that anymore. And they said they've done Three Body Problem. That's the only thing they've cranked out. So it's hard to not feel like this potentially could be one of those situations.
It could. I'm more confident in the Stranger Things finale being solid, just based on, they've taken their time with it. There's a fever pitch of, groundswell of support for this being probably, I'd feel comfortable saying the most watched thing on Netflix when it comes out. Like, I think this is such an anticipated finale. Like, hopefully the quality delivers, obviously, but the hype around this is bigger than anything I've seen coming out of Netflix ever. Like, this is one of the original Netflix series. Like, this is one of the OG series. Like, it's finally coming to an end, and I think the hype around it is very real. I'm more concerned with the follow-ons behind it than I am with Stranger Things necessarily, because I think they'll take their care with this. Not to say they won't take care with the other things, but the quality on it, I'm more concerned with what's coming behind it.
Especially if they're splitting their focus.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like when you start getting your hands involved in too many things that everything suffers. So we'll see what comes up with that. I'm a very little concerned with Stranger Things right now, and hopefully I'm right. God forbid we get to the end here and this is like the most hyped thing ever and it doesn't deliver. It's going to be problematic for them to follow up on. It's a very real concern that you have, because the pressure's on for them to deliver here, and then we'll see what happens when they come off it, because you see so many times where these people become so well known for making this incredible thing, and then when they try to do literally anything else, it doesn't work as well. So we'll see what happens. I think another good example of that is the Russo brothers. Like, we're so synonymous with the creative peak of Marvel when they got to Endgame and Infinity War, and then they swore off Marvel for a while and then tried to go do their own thing, and it didn't perform very well. No. And guess what they're doing now? They're back at Marvel doing what made them, household name. Well, really blew up their, profile as much as it did. But we'll see what happens with these guys. I hope that, they give us quality content to finish out the run of Netflix. And then when they go to Paramount, we get more quality stuff too. But the pressure's on for sure.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to leave the Game of Thrones comparison, because Game of Thrones that was one of the biggest TV shows of all time. That final season was one of the most hyped final season of all time. And you can look, like, the quality through the first 4 were incredible. Amazing. And 5 just kind of nosedive and tanked. And we kind of got the same situation at the end of Game of Thrones. It was taking multiple years to get seasons out, and we've got that here with Stranger Things. So there's a lot of parallels. I am hoping that Stranger Things does end up being good and ending on a high note, but it's taken 9 years for 5 seasons, something like that. So it's hard to have all these different parallels happening between these creatives, being like, well, I don't know if that bodes well for the final season. I'm being a little bit standoffish on it, because I'm like, I just don't want, because I love that show and I want to see it end on a high note, but you've got it being split into 3 parts. You've got it 3 years after the last season or so that we get it. I'm holding out hope, but I am being a little cynical that I'm like, I don't know if this is going to hopefully end the way that everyone hopes it's going to end, just because we've been burned before.
Let's hope it ends up more like Cobra Kai and less like Game of Thrones. So hopefully we get a satisfactory payoff with that for sure. I want to move us into our final news story of the week, which is more in the sports television conversation here. So we have TKO Sports, who are the owners of both the UFC and the WWE, have struck two different major deals with two different networks here, where you have the WWE, who for the last several years now have had all of their premium live events on Peacock, and if you have a paid Peacock service, you get access to all of their what used to be called pay-per-views but are now called premium live events, including like WrestleMania, all the big ones and stuff like that. They're moving over to ESPN next year, which is huge. And there's a lot to dig into when it goes to that deal specifically. They are not going to be charging extra for pay-per-views and premium live events. That's one thing they did want to see, but you do have to have like an ESPN subscription that's coming out later in the year. Some people are starting to feel a little bit of a type of way about it because it is more expensive than it is to have on Peacock, but that's one for sure. And the other big deal they struck with was, speaking of Paramount, the UFC starting next year is moving from ESPN to Paramount. And the big thing about this move here is their pay-per-view model is going away completely. If you have access to Paramount Plus, you get all of their, what used to be called pay-per-views, their numbered events. Like, I think last night was like 319 or something like that. It's been around forever. But if you have a Paramount subscription, you get those events for free now. Gone are the days of the $80 ESPN pay-per-views for your UFC events, but now they're going to be quote-unquote free if you have a Peacock's or a Paramount Plus subscription, which is huge. That's a huge shift, and they got massive amounts of money for both of these deals, and it's kind of changing the overall landscape of how these two products are being consumed now, because you're moving from Peacock to ESPN, and then you're moving from ESPN to Paramount. So it's a big deal for TKO to get these two major deals done.
And I think they said what Paramount Plus paid for UFC is more than the company is valued for right now.
A ton of money.
So it was like $7 billion, and Paramount's like valued at like $6 billion or something like that. And it's like, all right, you just paid more than your company is worth for UFC. And UFC is an interesting place because it doesn't really have that big star right now that the people are really turning into. I've seen, when I looked up a lot of stuff on this, there's a lot of chatters because UFC is kind of struggling a little bit because it doesn't have that star power, those fighters that you're really cheering for and looking for, those big personalities, because there's been so much controversy behind Conor McGregor and a lot of their other stars being in legal trouble and all the other stuff, that it's an interesting place. So it was interesting to see ESPN go away from UFC and take on WWE because, WWE has the new Netflix deal that they started and going stuff with that. But pay-per-view's been around for a long time, since the 80s, 70s, 80s that they've been doing that. I remember when I was big into wrestling in the 90s that everything was, buying the pay-per-view online. So having it part of the streaming services and kind of getting away from that to go to streaming is really interesting that they're kind of all doing that. I'm thinking they're just not making as much money as they thought they were going to anymore in this day and age off of the old pay-per-view model. So going to, I guess, a revenue share or something with the streaming model, that they're going to get something back from that. It's interesting to see them all going this way, because you even had ESPN took over NFL Network and NFL RedZone, with potential for college football to get a RedZone as well, which that could be huge for them because college football is insane with the popularity of it. And you bring a popular package and popular thing like RedZone to college football, that could be the biggest game changer out of all of these deals that ESPN has done lately, because you're going to have the college football faithful would flock to that in a moment. I wouldn't even think the cost would be a problem or issue with that, because it'll be a separate thing. Like, they'd pay that for college football
for sure. Like, now, like, we both have YouTube TV, full disclosure. Like, it's been within the last 2 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, that they have had the ability to watch multiple things, like multi-view streaming, like, which is huge during like college football. Because if you're a fan of college football on any given Saturday afternoon, there's at least 4 or 5 games going on simultaneously that you could potentially have an interest in. That, a service like RedZone would be huge for that. Like, on NFL Sundays, RedZone is super popular, especially with people who can't necessarily afford something overly expensive like Sunday Ticket, which is astronomically expensive at this point. And you could pay significantly less for the RedZone. And I know it's tons of people, myself included, like, come NFL season, I invest in the RedZone, and I watch it. I'm a big into fantasy football and all kinds of stuff like that, and having a service like that for college football would be huge. And I'm surprised that nobody's really taken that ball and run with it, but it seems like it's something ESPN could be interested in, which would be an absolute game changer for sports fans. But yeah, man, these are two huge deals for two huge, intellectual properties like the WWE and the UFC, and TKO going to the bank for both of these. Like, a huge deal for UFC that will hopefully help elevate Paramount. I think that's Paramount's hope for this, because Paramount's kind of lagging behind some of these other streaming services and popularity. Not to take away from the quality of stuff on it, because if you have Paramount Plus, there's a ton of good stuff, especially if you're into like old school cartoons. Like, if you're in our generation that grew up watching Nickelodeon religiously, like, a ton of the classic Nickelodeon stuff is on there. There's old Comedy Central stuff. It's got South Park. It's got a ton of big IPs on it. It's got all of the new Star Trek stuff as well. So there's like a bunch of huge intellectual properties that are on Paramount that I'm surprised it's not more popular than it is. But bringing something like UFC and a built-in fan base to it for a lot of people who, for the last several years that it's been on ESPN, when they upped the prices from like $50 for a pay-per-view to $80.
Yeah, the UFC fights are getting expensive.
It priced a ton of people out, myself included. Like, one of my favorite things for a long time was a group of people like getting together and splitting the cost of a UFC pay-per-view and just, having a good time with that. There's other ways around it that we're not going to advocate for. But, this is huge for most people who don't want to go that route anyway. And now this could be a potential to get them back into watching UFC more again, rather than just the free stuff that's on ESPN occasionally before the pay-per-views, like the preliminary fights before the main card. And then, the stuff that they occasionally do on ESPN and ABC, like getting those pay-per-views now for a significantly reduced cost is huge, a huge value for consumers. And hopefully that brings a lot of eyeballs back to Paramount Plus. And that's kind of what I think they're hoping for and what they're paying for. Like with WWE, like these pay-per-views are built into the cost of what they're paying for the service. So, paying for your ESPN subscription, you get access to other stuff, not just WWE, but the WWE will be included on that. So you're probably going to see a large amount of people probably migrate away from Peacock over to ESPN now when, they take over next year. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of the focus shift move from, Peacock, who's very much benefited from having the WWE on their platform, over to ESPN, and see how that built-in huge fan base follows from one service to another. It's going to be interesting to see how everybody's affected by it.
Yeah, because that's kind of the thing about, streaming for a while there was about, all right, we got this original movie, we got this original series, and they're still doing original movies and series, but it's turned into how do we get live sports, live events, WWE being added to Netflix are also done boxing, and they're adding that stuff. Like, all the streaming services are trying to add live sports and live events, and you even had Apple, get in on with MLS, and you've got soccer games streaming on there, and you've got them all trying to get into sports. There's even talks that after the success of F1, the movie, that Apple might potentially pick up streaming F1 races and stuff. Sure. So they're all kind of looking at banking on bringing sports or sports entertainment to their streaming platforms to help it out, because it's something that it still costs a lot of money, but compared to doing a ton of original movies and original shows for the platform, it's more money conscious for them to do the live sports and live events and bring in built-in fan bases to help them out. And like, as you said, UFC should benefit a lot from this, because as you mentioned, it was getting up $80, $90 to watch an event. I'm not going to watch it, and trying to go out to watch a UFC event is tough. And I feel like I'm talking like an old man here, is because most of the time you'd get the pre-fights around, about 7 o'clock at night?
Yeah, 7 or 8 o'clock.
But the main event wouldn't hit till like 1 to 2 a.m. somewhere in there. So like, you're in for a long night of watching UFC, which is hard to go out to a restaurant or anywhere else if you're going to be there for, 5 hours to watch this whole event.
That's a young man's game.
But it's going to be much nicer to have that on a streaming platform and not the $80, $90 buy-in. But WWE was even talking about this is going to change and expand a little bit of how they do their big events, because they started, whether it was either this year or last year, kind of splitting some of their shows into 2 nights of doing a double weekend. Now they're talking like they're going to expand more of their their pay-per-view shows, those live event shows, into being double weekend.
Yeah, for the last few years, they've done WrestleMania as 2 nights. That was by far their biggest show of the year, but this year they've expanded SummerSlam into 2 nights, which is kind of their big summer show. And then I believe the expectation is next year, maybe the year after, will be the Royal Rumble, which is another one of their quote-unquote Big Four pay-per-views, is going to turn into a 2-night event. So they're definitely moving more into expanding multi-night events, multi-ticketed events, kind of a whole weekend thing. One thing that's really interesting that they've started to do now, they're starting to do more of these events on Saturdays as opposed to Sundays, which, thank you, Jesus, I've been praying for that for a long time. But another thing that's interesting is they're moving their start times up a little bit if they're running a UFC event on the same weekend. So your WWE shows, which used to be done by 11 o'clock, sometimes 11:30, 12 o'clock, depending on the show. Thank God we're away from that era. But if there's a UFC card happening at 10 o'clock on the same night that they're running one of their premium live events, it might start at 7 and be done by 10. So you can switch over and watch the UFC event too if you're into that sort of thing. So it's been very interesting to see how they've altered some of their stuff, especially under the TKO umbrella. But we'll see what the future looks like for them now that they're moving on to 2 new platforms here coming in 2026. So ever-changing landscape in media. This is the next iteration of it, and I'm excited to see what happens with it.
Yeah, so I want to take us into our first review of the show, which is Nobody 2, which Josh jinxed us last week that he talked about how we've been lucky the last few movies we've gone to. We haven't had any people talking, and we had it this time. We had a group of older gentlemen behind us who were just screaming and hooping and hollering. All I could think of while he's screaming is Scary Movie, where they're dealing with someone talking and screaming and yelling and hooping and hollering in the theater. I'm like, oh, is this guy going to do it the whole film? He did it the whole film.
Yeah, great. Thanks for bringing that up right out of the gate. But
I had to hit him with that because he jinxed us. Come on.
I did. It's all my fault. Like it took away a little bit from the experience for sure.
Yeah, because it's hard to focus when you have a guy screaming in your ear. Yeah. Oh, I knew that was going to happen. Oh, yeah, I knew that. Oh, no. Like, dude, like, you can have reactions and be excited about something with it. Because, I mean, his level was not a normal or a whisper. It was screaming at the top of his lungs through there.
Yeah, it was very annoying.
But that aside, let's jump into Nobody 2 here. So this does pick up not too long after Nobody 1. So, of course, in Nobody 1, we had Hutch, who's kind of just working a mundane job every day, trying to put his past behind him. But then when a robbery happens that takes his daughter's bracelet or necklace and everything, he goes back on revenge, which gets him tied up with the Russians and kind of brings his past back to him. And we kind of see that in Nobody 2, those events of Nobody 1 had consequences because he's having to do more of the violent work because he burned all the Russians' money and did all that to him in the first film. So yeah, he's on the hook now. So he's day and night, all the time, out there doing these violent acts to take people out because he's got like a $30 million debt he apparently has to pay back. But enough comes enough, and he and his wife decide we need a vacation. We've got to get out. We've got to leave here. And that's kind of the premise of the rest of the movie. Like it does stick to a lot of the same beats that the first one has, a lot of the same structure of where, all right, we'll introduce where we are now. We're going to set up the kicker here. Then we'll go through with our setup of the rest of it. And like, I had fun with it, with the action sequence and stuff, but both of these are very thin on a overarching kind of story and narrative. Like it's just Bob Odenkirk beating people up, which is fun. It's in ways that's all you need, but it didn't really, to me, expand on anything with the characters other than just taking them on another adventure.
This franchise seems to have found its formula and have stuck to it almost to a T, right? Mm-hmm. So it is very formulaic the way this movie is laid out, but it works for it. I think it works for it. Like, Bob Odenkirk is an incredible actor, incredibly talented. Loved him in, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And, he's been in so many things over the years that he really hasn't taken on this kind of like action hero-y kind of stuff that for whatever reason, I was expecting not to like the original one at all. And I had a lot of fun with it. Like, it was just silly and over the top. And for the love of God, man, you know when your trash is out, set it out the night before. Don't try to set it out first thing in the morning. You're going to fail 10 times out of 10. But that's neither here nor there. But they definitely found a formula that works, and they kind of stuck to it in this one. And it's feels very much like a faithful follow-on continuation of the first film, which as a sequel, I kind of appreciate. It's like, okay, this is where he's at a few months down the line, perhaps, or maybe a year or so down the line from one of this last film, because the last film came out, what, 2022, 23? It's
been like 3-4 years.
Yeah, it's been like 2 or 3, maybe 4 years since the original came out. I'm missing my date on it, but you know, this is very much a continuation on of that story. You get the original family. The whole cast is back here. You have Christopher Lloyd as, you know, Hutch's dad, who's...
I do have to say I love seeing him doing a crazy over-the-top character like this.
I love it so much. And then you've got Reza from the Wu-Tang Clan is back as his brother, that, you know, is obviously his adopted brother, but, you know, playing his brother in the movie, that was a ton of fun as well. And, you know, you get them on this journey to this vacation where he needs a break from all of the violent stuff like you talked about. So they go back to a place that he and his brother went with their dad. Like, and this looks like the most rundown, rinky-dink, over-the-top, goofy infomercial for this place. And they go there, and it's just this kind of what you expect it to be, a kind of outdated family park.
Everything's broken down. Nothing's working.
This old water park / carnival type setting or whatever. But you find out that there is, because of course there is, this illegal, you know, this illegal syndicate working out of this town that's in the pockets of everybody from law enforcement to what have you. And in the most absurd way possible, this literally all starts with him getting attention drawn to himself because he's reminiscing in a hot dog restaurant with his family looking for a meal, and he's just staring off, and the man sitting where he was staring at just happened to be the sheriff of the town, played by Colin Hanks, who is just so silly in this movie too, is like this straight-laced corrupt sheriff, and it's just a silly movie that I just had fun with it. Like, you're going into these, you're not getting a deep plot, but the action's fun. It's silly when it needs to be, and it's over the top when it needs to be. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, it just works for me.
It definitely went even more over the top than the first one did, because you've got samurai swords, you've got duck boats, you've got a bunch of craziness that happens. I had fun with it. It's one that I can go in, if I watch it again, to turn my brain off and just watch for action, because when it does the action sequences, it does it really well.
Sure.
The biggest problem for me with this film is everything outside of the action sequences, because it's kind of one note.
Sure.
That, you know, the first film dealt with, well, Hutch and his wife are having some marital issues because they're just kind of stuck in a rut. Yeah. And when you pick up with here, you know, we ended with the first movie that they've kind of decided to stay together even after they learned everything of Hutch's other life and everything. And they bring it here, and they're still having marital issues. They're still having problems, which you can see, but it's still kind of the same note as a first film with their marital issues. And the same thing goes for his relationship with his kids. It's still that same note that, well, he doesn't have a relationship with his kids. They don't see him. He's always working. He's always doing other stuff. So it didn't really, to me, give us any advancement on that. We get one little thing with his wife is in that almost kind of didn't make sense, because you've had 2 films of they just don't work. They're not having a relationship with each other, but she makes a decision at the end of this that's like, well, you didn't kind of lead us into anything that would make sense for her to make that choice. And that's the only thing, like, you don't have to have a big story, but it's hard when something like this is going to be compared to like John Wick. It's very much kind of like a John Wick light. The first Nobody, you kind of get the surprise that, all right, Bob Odenkirk's an action star now, and you can get that, and you kind of lose that surprise a little bit in this one because you already have it, because it's very much that he's just doing the exact same stuff. Even some of the action sequences, especially the final action sequence, even though it's more over the top, it's structured. Like, this film is structured almost the entire way that the first one was. So there's not a whole lot of surprises or new stuff with it. Like, you do get some of the way people are dispatched is a little surprising, especially with what his brother does towards the end of stuff. You also get Sharon Stone coming in as a secondary villain in this movie that's just wildly over the top. And like, she catches somebody cheating at her casino, which looked like it was a hallway of a mansion. And it was just that one table, and they found a guy cheating, and then they revealed that there was like 2 other people with him helping him. So let's kill the 40 other people that are in the room with him. Like, it goes that absurd and over the top with it. So like, it has that little bit where you're trying to connect to the family and connect to what they're doing, and then it just goes absurdly over the top.
Yeah, like you said, it's a very cut by numbers formula for this film, where it's, you know, families having issues, something happens to the family that sets off this violent outburst from, you know, Bob Odenkirk's character, and it gets him involved and mixed in with the wrong people at the wrong time. Like, that's literally the entire formulaic layout for this. And guess what? If they do another one, which there's talks of doing a potential, I believe, 2 more films, if you believe what Bob Odenkirk had to say, that there could be potentially 4 films in this franchise, guess what part 3 is going to be? It's going to be the family trying to get back to some sense of normalcy. Something happens to one of the kids that sets him off down a rampage. He's going to get mixed in with the wrong people. It works. You know what this is? It's not necessarily John Wick. It's a Jason Statham movie.
Kind of, yeah.
It's kind of that same action. It's a very cut by numbers action type of film, and it works. It works for it. It's entertaining. You don't go into these movies looking for a deep plot. You just go in to see action done well with some humor mixed in. You're going to get your over-the-top cartoonish villain. You had it in 1. You have it in 2. You're going to have it in 3 and probably 4 when it gets there. Like, it's very much in that mold, and if this is, you know, this is your thing, it's the movie for you. And I had a blast watching it. Screaming idiot behind us, you know, notwithstanding, it was still a fun movie. I would love to go see it without that guy in my ear the entire time, just reacting to everything that happens. The sequences are cool and fun, don't get me wrong. Like, but
the action sequences are a lot of fun to watch.
It works. It's so silly and over the top, and Bob Odenkirk did a phenomenal job of, you know, working on this. I don't know how much of this stuff he was doing himself. There's stuff that's very obvious that he has a stunt double working, but like, I wonder how much physical activity he had in this, because it looked very well done. Like, I was very impressed with these, not only the first one, but the second one following up, that, you know, he makes it look as amazing as it does. And this is the guy I was never expecting to be an action star, but 2 movies in, it works.
Yeah, we had 2 movies back to back that featured hot dogs as being a key part of a story as well, because that's, as you said, that's what kind of kicks stuff off. They try to go to the water park to have fun, but it's shut down right now because there was an accident. So here's a free coupon for hot dogs, and they go eat the hot dogs. But he's reminiscing, and even got in towards the end when they're showing some photos from their vacation and stuff. It's Bob covered in mustard and eating the hot dogs and everything. I was like, it's fun and quirky. I do think part of my nitpicking picked up more as I was getting annoyed because of that person in the theaters. But like I said, the action sequences are fun. If you're going in purely for action and have fun with the action, then you're going to have fun with this. And if you like the first Nobody, you should like this one as well. The biggest thing is if you're expecting anything to be escalated or different. I mainly brought up John Wick because you do kind of get the storyline behind who he is, that he was a guy who left this service. He tried to get out, but someone brought him back in, and you get the different layers of, there's all these different type of organizations inside this one organization. We still really have no backstory on exactly who Hutch was or what he was doing. We get hints that it might have been a government type of deep cover thing, but you don't really get much detail on exactly what he and because his dad was in the FBI, and you knew that, and that, this town was actually not a vacation for the dad. There was more going on back then, which he didn't know about, which there was also part of this movie, like, if they literally left at one point when the first incident happens, the movie's over with.
Yeah, of course. He's like, no, I'm on vacation with my family. I'm sticking around even though they told me to skip town. Like,
because it's also his personality. Like, he just can't let things go.
No.
He has to be the one, like, all right, yeah, you did this. Okay, yep, I'm gonna walk away. Oh, I'm back.
That's kind of the
and there's literal scenes.
Yeah, that's kind of the central part of his character, right? He just doesn't have and he's very acknowledging of that in the movie. So that's kind of the central point to his character. But yeah, like it's just a ton of fun, man. You have a good time like watching this. It's silly, over the top. I love the cast that they have in this, especially Bob Odenkirk. Christopher Lloyd is amazing in it as well. Colin Hanks
love everything with Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, he's just a ton of fun, and like him doing films like this at his age and just kind of leaning into some of the absurdity of it. I'm here for it. I'm here for it all day.
And I like Connie Nielsen. She's, of course, great in Gladiator and other things, and she plays the wife in here. But I think she's kind of been underused in both movies. Like she's a great actress, but she's kind of been flat as well because it's all about Hutch. It's not about her as much. Like you get to see a little bit more in here with her, but it's still kind of flat in one note with a lot of these characters. That's why I'm being a little more nitpicky, because I did enjoy the first Nobody and had a different surprise with Bob Odenkirk, and this one was just it's a sequel that's very much like the first one. You just change the villain and change the location, but everything else is pretty much the same. That's the knock I'm going to give it. If you want to go in and watch it for action, this is going to give you plenty of action to go have fun with, but past that, it's really ridiculous, over the top film, but you can have a lot of fun with that stuff. It's just, they amped up the intensity of the violence and everything in here too, because you've got some really graphic kills and things that happen in this movie.
Yeah, very much over the top for sure. But in the end, Nobody 2 is a very formulaic, by the numbers, fun, entertaining action film. If you're a fan of Nobody 1, you're going to be a fan of Nobody 2. It has a lot of the same story beats, similar action, tons of over-the-top fun and, silliness and hijinks that we really like to have in some of these action films. You're not going to get a world-changing plot or some thought-provoking script here. Like, this is very much a get in, punch the bad guys, win the day, kind of get out, and, everybody's kind of happy in the end. For that reason, I'm going to give it a 7. I'm going to give it a solid 7, and it's the wellness with which they do the action pumps it up for me in this, because it's a lot of fun. Visually, they get very creative in the way they, sequence their action scenes. Some of the fight scenes are fantastically done. The violence is ramped up to a little bit of an extent in this one that puts it on par with the first movie for me, and this is a very successful follow-up. For that reason, I'm giving it a 7. Like I said, you have to deduct points for, not having a groundbreaking plot. Some of the characters don't get that much development in this, but if you're a fan of the first one, you're absolutely going to enjoy the second one as well.
I'm going to take it down just slightly below you to 6.5, just because, as I said, and you've mentioned as well, it's very flat, it's very formulaic. Like, it just copies what they did in Nobody 1, change the location, change the intensity of the violence and whatnot, which can work. But at the same time, it's not really bringing much new to it. We don't get much advancement with our characters. Stories, really, we get Hutch in a place that kind of didn't make sense exactly why he was in debt and everything else based on what he did in the first one. But the action sequence is what saves it from being just a completely kind of terrible movie. Bob Odenkirk is great. Christopher Lloyd is great. But you're going in to watch the action. Don't go in expecting a deep story or getting any more depth that we didn't get in the first one. It's not giving that. It's just giving you over-the-top action. If that's what you're going for, then you're going to have a lot of fun with what it does with the action. It has some great set pieces in there, but it's also very even more over-the-top than the first one did. But that can be a lot of fun. But yeah, 6.5 is where I fell on it, just because it lost a lot because it just was just too cookie cutter, copying the first one over and just changing a few scenes.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely was a little silly with the whole, he's significantly in debt because he burned all of the bad guys' money, but his handlers are now all of a sudden like, hey, you're on the hook for all this money. I'm like, that's not always how
the Russians should be on the hook.
Like, yeah, but taking that out and taking that aside, like, it sets up for what could potentially be another fun film, like, beyond that, because it does literally start the exact same way and end literally the exact same way as the first movie, where you have the scene where he's looking all beat up. Shout out to the wolf in this one, just to have, apparently he's, in the John Wick vein, he's got a dog that he's attached to now, but, or or in this case, a wolf. But, it very much starts and ends literally the exact same way as the first one, which I had a little bit of laugh about. I'm like, okay, they're going for consistency here. There's a theme, there's a pattern, there's a formula, and they stuck to it to a T, which, if you're not looking for a ton of advancement, this is what you're going to get out of it. And I appreciated the similarities at the same time. Like, it's like, okay, this is what a nobody film is going to look like, and they've established that over 2. If they switch it up for 3, I'm going to crush it for not doing the exact same thing. So stay tuned for when Nobody 3 comes out. I'm excited to watch it, of course, and when eventually that gets made and comes out. But like, if they don't do that same formula, I will trash part 3. So we'll see what happens when that comes out.
That's the hard thing. Like, if they change it up too much, then you're going to be mad, but if they don't change it enough, then you could also be upset with it. It's a lose-lose situation. But as you said, it is literally the exact same. They change minor details.
Sure, yeah.
But it opens and closes the exact same way. Yeah. The last fight is a copy of the last fight. Yeah. Like, everything is like, all right, we did this in the first one. Well, we'll do it here, but we'll change this.
Same but slightly different.
So it's definitely sticks closer. It's like, you can have, as we've seen with other action films, where they stick to very similar because this is what you're going to expect out of it.
Sure.
But they give us a lot more depth. This is not going for depth or, a deep, solid storytelling with it. It's just, we know you like this from the first one. We're just going to repeat it to a T. We're going to repeat it.
It was so fun. But yeah, if you're into these type of action films, this is one definitely worth going and checking out in the theaters for sure. It's a ton of fun. Hopefully you don't get a loud big mouth fool behind you kind of trying to take away the experience from you. But outside of that, I still had a lot of fun watching this.
Yeah, so Nobody 2 is in theaters now. Go check it out if you enjoy a good action flick to go. Like, our scores are a little lower, but what it did right was the action. So if that's what you want to see and you want a big action spectacle on screen, this will give you plenty of action to enjoy.
For sure. Now I want to move us over into our second review of the week. We have Marvel's Eyes of Wakanda. So this is an animated series that dropped every single episode on Disney Plus when it came out a little over a week ago. 4 total episodes. And this is kind of an anthological take on the history of Wakanda and the history of the Black Panther, right? So you have what are in actuality 4 episodes telling 4 different stories of 4 different points in time. So if you kind of think back to our Predator Killer of Killers episode, where we talk about the kind of 3-episode anthology where it's dealing with Predator in 3 different timelines, this is kind of a similar-ish type take in theme, where it's, instead of 3 episodes, you get 4 episodes at different points in history, talking about kind of the history of Wakanda and the history of the Black Panther as it ties into not only regular history, but by the time we get to the very end, it does have a direct tie-in to a Marvel feature film that plays out at the very end. We'll get to that when we get to the end of this review.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because I didn't see a lot on exactly what the story is going to be like going into this, but Predator Killer of Killers is the perfect comparison to it, but it's also, one was a film, this is a TV series, but it is very much telling, we're seeing how Wakanda mixed in with history, that they've been around a lot longer than we expect, but most of this goes around the fact that a bunch of Wakandan artifacts have gone missing. They're spread out in the real world. They're still, showing how against the real world Wakanda is. There's ways that they could have stepped in and do things throughout history, but they kind of kept themselves secret, even because we got them mixing in with Troy, and we got them different battles throughout history and stuff, but they kept it, they have rules that if you go out to recover one of the artifacts, and this plays a big part of one of the stories, is that they go to recover something, but he doesn't just take the Wakandan artifact because it was stuck. He takes like part of the statue and stuff with him, and that sets off a big ordeal. Like we have to get in and get out without being seen. And it's interesting, and the animation was really solid and fluid, and the voice acting was good and stuff, but I don't think this had as big of an impact on me as
Sure.
like Killer of Killers did. I think they did a little bit better job of having that bigger punch at the end with their kind of conclusion with it. Like, these were solid episodes, but it's one when I finish it, like, I don't know if that's something that I'll revisit too often or go back into. Like, it told a solid enough story through it all, but there wasn't anything that fully like wowed me or made me think. Like Predator Killer Killers, you had the like samurai type of battles and fights, and you had all this, and you had some fights and battles in here, but nothing really stood out too far. And I think it's, because each one was only 30 minutes or so, and you're trying to go through the full story of it all, that it was good, but it wasn't that memorable to me.
Sure, and you just have it kind of playing like almost like a what if scenario almost, but not with the what if premise kind of. So it's like, what if Wakandans had been involved in all these different points in history in some way, shape, or form, and how their mission to get all of these artifacts back to Wakanda that have been misplaced, like taking place throughout periods of time. And it goes on a fun journey. Like, we definitely have our moments where you deal with not only the past, a little bit of the future as well that gets involved in here. And, one episode that really stood out for me was the third episode, where it's set up in China, or, China adjacent, but, dealing with that statue and taking that piece of vibranium back to Wakanda. And, the guy that's, in charge of going out and doing this comes back and has a passenger with him, and that passenger happens to be one of the immortal Iron Fists that have existed throughout history. And you have this, kind of love story back and forthish kind of with the female Iron Fist and the Wakandan agent who's out trying to, get this artifact to come back, and has a fun story that kind of goes through what happens when an outsider makes their way into Wakanda and how they deal with it and everything that goes crazy in it. Like, that was a lot of fun. Like, I had a lot of fun with that too. But get your first real Marvel introduction of an Iron Fist outside of the Netflix series. So this is them really dealing with an Iron Fist type character that they haven't with before, which was a lot of fun. I had a lot of enjoyment out of that too. But I like how it goes throughout history, but you see in the very slight ways that a theme from this episode carries on to the next one, where you have the formation of not just the Dora Milaje, but you have a former Dora Milaje who doesn't want to be a Dora Milaje anymore and becomes something more. And then you have it down the line where that character is now the leader of this group who's significantly older, and it's a jump up in time for another group of this established kind of making their way out. And it was a really fun kind of journey through time, and they found just enough of a way to tie them all together to make it feel anthologic to, make it tied together in a way that makes sense from a flowation of time and a storytelling sense. That I think they did an effective job of doing it that way.
You got to a little bit more emotion in the war dogs and everything else, because you have the people who are sent out. You could talk about that, like Wakanda's supposed to be this just nation that's protected from everybody that no one would want to leave. You have perfection of life here, basically, but you get the war dogs who go out on these missions, and they're like, it's when you come back from being out in the rest of the world, it changes you. Like, there's like, you even get one of the war dogs is like, just send me back out on another mission. I don't know how to live here anymore. I don't know how to be here. So I did like that depth. I think even though I enjoyed all the episodes, I think that it ended a little better than it started with the third and fourth ones, because you got the Iron Fist, you got Black Panther, and the last one, the first two are more original kind of stories and stuff set in that world. But the Lion was an okay story. We weren't exactly, because it's one you're setting up and you're trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, well, he's attacking Crete, and you don't know exactly what's going on. Is this Wakanda attacking? And you're starting to slowly unravel the story, but it's not until that third and fourth episode that you really start seeing everything kind of come together and see where we're going with. And the fourth one actually went in a little bit different direction than I was expecting, because we get, with a little spoilers here, we get time travel going on as well. And it's like, okay, I didn't expect to see Wakandans doing time travel and see how all that plays out through the history of time and what they're doing, but how a seemingly insignificant item is very significant to basically the future of the earth and the world.
Yeah, you definitely get that involved in this, and it goes through a fun run of 4 episodes. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It tells a coherent story throughout the 4 episodes that makes it very easy to follow. It's a quick watch, like you said. All the episodes are 30-ish minutes. Some a little more, some maybe slightly under than that. You can get this done in 2.5 hours most, and you can go on about your day. It's no different than watching a film, and I think that works for it in an episodic telling like this, and just kind of short, sweet, and to the point, which I appreciated because, like I said, it didn't overstay its welcome. You didn't go too crazy with everything, and you kind of told this throughput of time story of a little bit of the back history of Wakanda and some of the things they were involved in. And I have no problem spoiling the very end of it because I don't know how much traction this show is going to gain anyway, but you get the artifact from the last episode is directly tied into the Black Panther film. It happens to be, spoiler alert, the artifact that Killmonger is looking for in the museum. When he goes to rob the museum, the last scene you see in the show is the back shot of, Killmonger in that museum, and that artifact is sitting in there. So you get that tie into Black Panther. And if you're watching the episode, if you remember watching Black Panther, you're like, okay, I know where this is and how this is tied in. But they give you that last shot and that lasting impression of it too, which was awesome. I love to see that that's how it's all tied together. But yeah, it was a ton of fun, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a back history on some of the things that happened to this nation that, for so long has more or less been hidden away from the world until the events of the MCU really brought them out into the forefront. So I was happy with the way it was. It's a solid, it's not groundbreaking, it's not game-changing, it's not going to change how Marvel operates or anything like that, but it was a fun setting for 4 stories to tell this overarching story, and I think they did a good job with it. I really do. Like it's one that you don't have to watch repeatedly, but I don't think it's intended to. I think it's just one that you get it for some informational, and you can kind of go back on about your business. So it was effective in that way for me.
I do wonder if it would feel slightly different if they did go the Predator Killers route and made it a film instead of 4 separate episodes. Sure. That they structured and kind of weaved them into each other a little bit more through a film, because you do have those hard stops, and that you could have blended a little bit more in the movie if it would have changed the impact of it or not. But yeah, if what it was and what it did it well enough. Like it told a simple story throughout there, but it gave you a little bit more. I think it was more, I just wanted to see a little bit more depth.
Sure.
Or a little bit more Wakanda, because 90% of it takes place outside in different historical elements, and we only got to see bits and pieces of where Wakanda was, and the most we saw with it was there's a lot of... The 3rd episode had a lot more humor than the rest of them, because, our war dog in there is just trying to, oh, no, I lost communication. I did this. Oh, don't worry about it. Oh, this is a training exercise. Like, you had a lot more almost slapsticky type of comedic moments in there, but it worked. It was fun. It was fun to see a female Iron Fist show up and see the difference, and because of their relationship and how things worked there, of how that played out. And it was a little interesting. When we got to the 4th one, you have the prince who's trying to do things a little differently and handle things differently. We're kind of seeing, well, that's kind of where the Black Panther is kind of starting in Wakanda, and you're seeing the beginning of that, but you also get to see like way into the future, even past where the live action films were and stuff. And it does make me wonder exactly where Black Panther 3 might be going. Do we introduce maybe a young version of who the Black Panther Queen is from the 4th episode, that she's trying to, does it lead up to that potential war and everything else we're seeing in there? But we're not going to see it because we get that cut into Eyes of Wakanda, but also doesn't work in the overall scope of like the MCU if they're going to have this big kind of alien war that they have at the end of that. So it might be something that where we just get a little bit of a nod, like, all right, this is her name, and like, oh, okay, so that's from Eyes of Wakanda, and we're setting up where that may go, or we may not. But it's one of those, like, you just don't know, because MCU, you're always thinking about it. How does this tie into the overall? And this is a prequel through time leading you right up to the first Black Panther movie, and what it tries to tell and do, it does it well enough. Like, it's just, it tells, like I said, it's well animated, it's well voice acted, and everything else. It didn't have a huge impact on me, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's still a fun watch, and it does all of the things it needed to do. Like you said, the animation on it was really well done. Like you said, the voice acting and stuff. The stories don't go super deep, but they're short episodes. Like it's not. It doesn't have the time to go as deep as maybe it could. If all of the episodes were an hour, maybe they could have dived in a little deeper. But I don't think that was the intent of this. I think it was, here's what we're telling. Wham, bam, we're done, and we're gonna move on to the next thing. And I think for that, it was fairly effective enough.
Yes, in the end, Eyes of Wakanda is a solid little series. It's only 4 episodes. It'll take you about 2 hours to get through it. It's well animated, well voice acted. It tells its story well enough, but it's something that just didn't stick with me afterwards. Like, once I watched it, I'm like, all right, that's good, and I moved on. Like, it wasn't bad, but I don't know. It just didn't have that rewatchability to me for most. Like, I've gone back and rewatched Black Panther 1 and 2 several times now, and I really enjoyed that. It just, I don't know, it felt good, but my brain was also comparing it to Predator Killer of Killers a lot, which was a kind of a surprise that we got, and now we've got something in the Marvel realm that was very similar, but I don't think it was done as kind of well as Predator Killer of Killers did with the interconnected stories throughout. I'm giving it a 7.5. I don't think it's a terrible series as well. It does have a few problems and issues, but most of it was just it told its story and it got out.
Yeah, I'm giving it a solid 7. Like I said, it's not earth-shattering for the MCU. It's a fine series in doing what it does. It's very short. It's a quick watch, and it kind of did what it needed to do and got you to the point where, like I said, it ends on that shot with Killmonger in the museum looking at that artifact. So it works its way through time. It's simple enough to follow, and it's a quick bit of entertainment there from Marvel to kind of hold you over until the next thing that comes out. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to go back and revisit it now that I've seen it, so it does kind of knock it down a little bit for me from there, but overall it was just fine. So I think 7 is a nice place to land on it for me.
Actually, I actually thought we were going to be swapped on that one, that I was going to be a little lower and you were going to be a little higher on it. But yeah, it's not bad. It's just nothing that it's just fine. Yeah, that's a kind of the best way to describe it. It's just fine.
Yeah. It's one that, like I said, you could watch it very quickly. It's one you can carve out a little bit of time you might have spent watching a movie. Just throw that on and go through the 4 episodes. Check it out. Come to our YouTube comments. Come to our Discord. Let us know what you think when you watch it for sure. All 4 episodes of Eyes of Wakanda are out on Disney Plus now. Go check it out. And when you check it out, come to us. Let's talk about it. Let's see what you think. Is there an episode that stood out more than the others to you? I personally like the 3rd episode dealing with the Immortal Iron Fist and their trek through Wakanda in that. And I had a lot of fun in that episode in particular, and we'll see what episode was your favorite. Come let us know.
Yeah, I kind of liked episode 2 in a way because I like it's kind of the Odyssey story, the Troy, the history stuff, even though the real and fake history, however it all goes. I kind of enjoyed them hitting that point in history and getting to see a little bit different look at how the Battle of Troy went down and stuff with it. But there could be a point that I revisit. And Nobody 2 I do want to revisit because of that guy kind of ruining a bit of our experience. As we've said in many reviews and everything else, your mental state going into watching something, how people are around you, if they're annoying the crap out of you, you're going to have a different feeling about the film because maybe you're not able to let yourself go a little bit more and just enjoy the silliness and campiness. And that might be why I gave Nobody 2 a little bit lower score, because that guy had annoyed me so much that I was just like, I'm about to turn into Hutch and go shut this guy up because he won't be quiet. And we get people cheering and having a good time in theaters, but this is different. This was just yelling and screaming to yell and scream at the screen like you're at home and no one else is around you. Like, do that at home, not here. So I'm probably not going to go back to theaters to watch it again, but when it comes out on digital, I'll probably pick it up and watch it again and see if I feel a little differently. Like, it's still got its problem, its thinness with its story. But I think if I'm in a better mindset of not being annoyed, that the action sequences, the fun part of the movie, will stand out a lot more.
I think you'll have more fun when you go back and check it out again, because going and seeing all these movies together like we do, some of the things that you weren't reacting to that I figured you would react to, I was like, he's very annoyed at the person behind me. It's like he's not enjoying the movie as much as I think he could be if you could just let it go just a little bit, because at the end of the day, you can't control people. But for the love of God, man, like when you go see these movies, don't act like that. Don't act like that guy. Don't hoop and holler and react to every little thing and act like you're just yelling at your TV at home. Don't do that. Like, that just sucks the fun out of it for everybody. I've never seen a theater clear out quicker than I did on that movie.
We
like,
got up and left
immediately, and that's not something we normally do too, but we were both kind of...
And it wasn't because of the movie. It was because of the guy.
Kind of over it by the end of it. We're just like, all right, can we end this movie so we can get out of here, for the love of God? But, and that just goes to show the type of experience you can have at a theater, and maybe it affected our experience with it. We might like it even more when we go back and watch it again. Who knows? But that's kind of the fun in coming here and talking about it real time and just kind of giving you our experience with it, which is something that we both get a lot of enjoyment out of. So I'm always happy when we could share those experiences, good and bad, in the theaters. So I'm glad we had that conversation about it for sure.
It's also interesting. We don't have to wait too much longer to get the next Marvel property on Disney Plus, because Marvel Zombies got moved up to the middle of September instead of the beginning of October. So they're almost a month in between getting Eyes of Wakanda. We'll have Marvel Zombies coming out, which, as we kind of mentioned, that, as you mentioned, and I agree with it, this kind of felt like a what if spinoff. Marvel Zombies is a what if spinoff. So, but it's supposed to go darker. It's supposed to be TVMA. We're getting Mahershala Ali as Blade as a voice in here. So this will be his second appearance, which first is the voice at the end of Eternals, which Marvel has forgotten exist. And now we'll have him as a voice of Blade within here. Like, what? We didn't do an Eternals movie. It's almost like the Inhumans. Like, they forgot that even existed ever, other than, Doctor Strange bringing one of them back. But it's like, what's the Inhuman series? We did an Inhuman series?
Never heard of it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. That might be the only way we ever get Mahershala Ali in the MCU as a voice character on this. So very excited to check that one out when it comes out, for sure.
Yeah, but that's all we have for you this week. Coming up next, we will be getting an early look at Caught Stealing, and we'll be breaking down the first 3 episodes of Alien Earth. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio realm on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.